Welcome back to Fast Market. I'm Alex Coffey alongside Kevin Hanks. Now time for our hashtag segment. Joining us here in studios, TD Ameritrade Network contributor Jenny Horn. And from LikeFolio.com, we got the VP of Research, Megan Brantley, with us as well. Good morning to both of you guys. Jenny, starting with you here, we're talking Ulta, so we're talking beauty products. As much as Kevin and I have to prep for the show, I don't think we're experts on the space, but I understand kind of the business model. This is a company that focuses obviously on this segment of products, but they also kind of have a wide variety of quality. So they have kind of your traditional pharmacy, drugstore style brands, but also the higher end brands. They're oftentimes associated and compared with Sephora,
yes,
which is a little bit on the higher end side. And so am I on to something here? Am I explaining this right?
Yes, you can tell you have a girlfriend. You have definitely the right idea here, because it is sort of a mix of maybe your lower end items that you'd get at a drugstore, say a Walgreens, a CVS. But also, Ulta really does well is also having some of these more specialty items. And really, what we're seeing in makeup as a whole is sort of these secular trends, as so many people really got into what they're calling at-home grooming. Say you were dyeing your own hair at home, you were doing your nails at home, or you were more focused on your skincare, which has actually been a huge part of growth with Ulta and Sephora and a lot of these makeup brands alike. But if you look at some of its makeup peers, actually, e.l.f. reported a huge earnings beat at the beginning of August, and Estee Lauder is at nearly all-time highs following its report last week. So very, very strong momentum going into this report, which is, of course, today after hours. But what we saw in the first quarter was actually a rebound that surprised even the street. Ulta reported sales that jumped about 65%, which crushed expectations of about 40%, but also, more importantly than that, signaled a rebound from their pandemic lows. Their comps jumped 7% from the period 2 years ago, signaling that actually this company's business model is better than it's ever been, better than 2019 and better than 2020, which of course is a very strong sentiment for this name going forward. And their CEO actually said this booming makeup demand was supported, one in part by this stimulus money sort of fueling into the economy, but another with just their innovative new products. They've launched a lot of different lines of skincare, which has been very popular with consumers. And again, this sort of skin trend is one that many analysts think is here to stay. But with this quarter, sales are expected to come in at about $1.72 billion, which would actually be higher than last year and higher than 2 years ago. Again, just showing how strong this sort of, new trend in makeup has really become. The fact that they're able to post sales higher than their pre-pandemic lows. But their outlook will, of course, be in focus for this report, but they're expecting comps to rise between 23 and 25% for the rest of the fiscal year. And their operating margin is expected to hit about 11%. And this is expected to actually continue climbing with these new product releases they continue to launch. But, this is a name where there's so much momentum. There's such high expectations. The stock has really run up pretty strong this year. There is always that concern that a lot of these high expectations I'm discussing have already been priced in. But our first tweeter today sort of talks about, trading this name ahead of this report, which says Ulta has earnings coming soon and has been in a healthy trend. Looks like a good earnings run-up candidate. Would it risk holding into earnings release right now as Delta ramps up? Supply chain worries might ease back into future guidance, but hard to ignore a good chart. So I do think there is that risk, of course, with decreased foot traffic with this Delta variant. Also, I do think it's a concern that the CEO admittedly said that the stimulus was part of their sort of surging demand, because we know, of course, from our other retailers that is sort of fading right now in the economy. But it's impossible to not talk Ulta without discussing its partnership with Target, as it just kicked off sort of its unofficial launch, where it plans to be in 100 Target stores. And as of actually last week, it's already in 52 stores. So it's about halfway there. So right now, it seems like that has been received so positively on Twitter, which is what our next tweeter talks about, which says, OMG, the Ulta Target partnership, my rewards count will be thriving. Now, with these makeup brands, rewards accounts are very important, which is why I included that in there. And I really have to say that the feedback on Twitter was super positive about this partnership, and as well as Kohl's and Sephora, although we've discussed, Megan, many times on this show how this was an unlikely partnership, and I sort of see them going opposite ways, but it does seem like people are very happy. So that is actually, to my surprise, pleasantly.
Yeah, when we put together the charts for this segment, we had to focus in on this, how is the Ulta Target partnership comparing versus the Kohl Sephora, just because we have talked about it so much. And so we wanted to put some data behind it. And what we see is that we really think that this this alignment between Target and Ulta is a good match, and consumers agree. Not only are the tweets overwhelmingly positive, as you mentioned, but you can see just the explosive growth versus a similar launch time for Kohl's and Sephora. So I think that this is one of those things where Ulta really knows its consumer. Ulta knows that there's a lot of overlap between, especially its more traditional drugstore brand versus Target. And so I think that it's really smart how it's approaching this partnership, because what Ulta's doing is it's saying, okay, we're going to curate our top 50, prestige brands and place these inside of Target stores to kind of expand the accessibility to these different consumers. Whereas, Kohl's and Sephora, they're taking a bit of a different approach. I think Sephora's more of throwing the kitchen sink at Kohl's consumers and, launching more than 125 different prestige brands, I think more than 8,000 different products. So slightly different approaches here. And just overall from a match perspective, and at least from what we're seeing from, consumer happiness reports and these tweets that we're reading, consumers are really, really excited for this Target Ulta partnership. And so this may be one positive note that the company can hit on, at least looking forward.
First thing I have to say, I have to push back on something my partner Alex Coffey said. Don't lump me into this non-makeup group. I don't roll out of bed and look like this, Alex. There's a lot of primping involved in getting me camera ready. So hold on there. So now, Megan, when we look at what you're talking about here, which is the more important part of Ulta's growth going forward? Is it the fact that they may open their own stores? They're seeing enough demand where the notes I'm reading, they could be opening their own stores, or is this going to be an explosion of the relationship between Ulta and Target, which I think is the perfect relationship versus price points and overall customers? Which do you think, or does LikeFolio have any data on which is the fastest part of this company? Is it their own stores or the Target partnership?
I think that obviously the Target partnership is going to be a smaller percentage of their exposure versus their own stores. However, it is a huge growth potential. So this is definitely something we're monitoring. It's really, really early, so it's tough to say. But based on our data, we think that this could be really big for both companies. This is a really just synergistic partnership. But then also, I think Jenny hit on some really interesting points that Ulta's done a really nice job amping up the amount of skincare products it has, the amount of hair care products it has. So it's, less of a focus on just makeups, just traditional cosmetics. And they also did a good job of shifting to digital. So, we see a lot of these mentions as well. So if we do have an instance where maybe we're shifting a little bit more, cautiously, consumers staying a little bit more at home, there's still this digital access, and there's still these other products like skincare and hair care to kind of offset any traditional weakness whenever you look at makeup specifically. But in general, what we're seeing now is that there's this kind of reinvigorated discovery of beauty products, including makeup, across the board. And a lot of this is being driven by these micro influencers. So this is kind of an interesting conversation, because I think one of the first times I ever came on to talk with you guys on this show, it was about Ulta, and we were talking about Kylie Jenner, and that's just this major influencer. Now we're looking at things, and we're really starting to see these micro influencers move the needle, where they're discussing their hair care routine, they're discussing their makeup routine, they're discussing just their their regular beauty skin routine, and really promoting product discovery. Whenever you look at Ulta mentions on TikTok, those views have hundreds of millions of views. So I think that this is one of those things where now there's kind of a reinvigorated and a younger audience that's discovering these new products. And so that's one place that Ulta can, continue to capitalize on, because you can see this chart, these mentions in 2019, this infusion of interest wasn't there. So I think that long term, this is also a positive, growth factor for Ulta.
Megan, that's exactly what I was just going to ask you about, because it feels like you can't go on social media now without seeing some sort of product endorsement that's involving beauty, or someone doing a makeup tutorial, which is so out of my wheelhouse, but it's one thing you can't really escape. And then you see people like Kylie Jenner, who has millions of followers, who's posting about her skincare, and then people are going out and sort of seeking out those exact products. So it's actually genius marketing, because it seems like Ulta doesn't actually have to spend very much money to sort of be all over not only TikTok, but also Instagram Reels and, whatever else these kids that I am not cool enough to know about are watching. But I think it's almost genius because they've sort of recaptured, like you mentioned, a younger demographic that is, again, beyond me, but it really works, I think. I have like my brother's friends are all talking about all these different makeup artists where I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about, but it's, to me, the best form of almost free marketing.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is, whenever we look at those mentions, when you're looking at that chart, we're not counting the mention from the influencer itself, right? We don't really, we're not looking at that traction. We're looking at what is the ripple effect? Is that actually moving the needle and just regular consumers actually making a purchase and actually discovering a product? And so the fact that we're still seeing these levels online with where we were in 2020, I think is pretty impressive. And so I think that that's kind of at least, a positive note for Ulta moving forward. At least heading into this earnings event too, we're starting to see buzz increase a bit. We're starting to see people who, as they go out and as they're more social, they want to put their best face forward. So I think it makes sense that there would be this natural, resurgence of interest in at least some cosmetics and beauty products. In terms of, trading this earnings event, our signal is officially neutral, but it is on the higher side of neutral. So this is one of those things where I feel like in the past we talked to you guys, neutral maybe leaning more bearish. This is one of those things where our signal is neutral, but it's at the higher end, driven by this, kind of resurging buzz and resurging consumer interest. But we just wonder if expectations are a little bit too high. And so that's kind of why we're cautiously optimistic for this report.
Megan Brantley, good stuff as always, the VP of Research at LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us as Ulta closes in on its all-time high, about $1.05 off of that as we speak.